Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending upon where you have joined from. And welcome to Data Platform Geeks webinar. And today our webinar is on PowerApps and Flow best practices working with SQL Server. And our today's speaker is Manohar Punna, who is a Data Platform MVP from Australia and also a Vice President of Data Platform Geeks. My name is Satya Ramesh, and I will be the host for you today. And Aarti Nambiar is helping me with the moderation of today's webinar. Before we move forward, a quick introduction about eDominer systems. Under eDominer systems, we have SQL Maestros, under which we do a lot of advanced trainings on SQL Server and Microsoft Data Platform and AI-related technologies. And we have recently launched this video courses on SQL Server performance tuning and T-SQL querying and programming, which I'll talk about a bit later. And we also have hands-on labs and learning kits available. Under eDominer systems, we also have a couple of other brands, our corporate training unit called Peopleware India, and our famous ERP product called SMERP. And our today's concentration is on Data Platform Geeks, which is a community initiative by Amit Bansal, under which we do a lot of free in-person events and webinars. And once in a year, we do an annual summit called Data Platform Summit. Recently, in August 2019, we have concluded Data Platform Summit 2019, where 900 plus attendees from 300 plus companies participated, and 50 plus speakers from 20 different countries traveled down to Bangalore and delivered 100 plus sessions. It was an incredible summit and it was a huge hit, and you can learn more about this summit using the links provided here. And my colleague Aarti is putting up these links in chat window. If you want to learn more, you can follow the links and learn more about Data Platform Summit. Here is a quick picture about where Data Platform Geeks team and eDominer team standing on the stage of Data Platform Summit 2019. So here is the Data Platform Geeks core team: Amit Bansal, who is the founder and president, and Manohar Punna, who is our speaker for today, is a vice president of Data Platform Geeks. And we have Avanish Panchal, Vijay Mishra, Sandeep Pani, and few other speakers who are our regional mentors from various countries in India. If you wish to be a regional mentor for Data Platform Geeks, you can become a regional mentor using the link there in chat window. You can click and apply for a regional mentor position. These are the eDominer teams from across India, which will help us to execute these free events. And a special thanks to Microsoft for supporting us a lot. And as you already know, you must be a Data Platform Geeks member by now, and be a member, and you'll get access to a lot of free videos, labs, magazines, and other resources. And we'll put up all conference materials for free, so that all members can download our past conference materials as well. So please be subscribed to Data Platform Geeks. You will get notifications about our upcoming in-person events and webinars as well. And please whitelist our domain dataplatformgeeks.com so that you won't miss any of our updates. So these are the few channels where you can post up your questions beyond this webinar. You can definitely ask your questions during the webinar using Q&A panel. But beyond the webinar, if you have any questions, you can post all the questions in our social channels. It is a Facebook group and LinkedIn group, and we have a Telegram channel also. So you can post your question there in Telegram channel. Please put up your questions in Q&A panel only. Don't use chat window. Chat window will sometimes get lost about the question. So please use Q&A panel to post any of your questions. And all these webinars from Data Platform Geeks will get recorded, and we'll upload these webinars in YouTube channel of SQL Server Geeks. You can find the URL here, youtube.com/SQL Server Geeks. And we also have a couple of other YouTube channels. You can find SQL Maestros YouTube channel, where we upload a lot of free SQL Server stuff out there. And you can join our community on mobile using Telegram. So that's all as of now. So over to you, speaker. I'm handing over to Manohar Punna, who is a Vice President of Data Platform Geeks and also a Data Platform MVP from Australia. Over to you, Manu.
Thank you, Satya. So let's start with the webinar. I don't have many slides today. I've just got a couple, just my introduction slide, and we'll quickly dive into demos from there. So as Satya has already mentioned, I am Manohar Punna. I'm a Data Platform MVP as well as head the Data Platform Geeks as a Vice President. As career-wise, I work as a data platform consultant for HubSpot Solutions based out of Melbourne, Australia. A quick look at my profile. I'm an author, blogger, speaker, there's a lot of things on this slide. You can look at this profile anywhere where I've uploaded my presentations before. The most important thing on this slide is my Twitter handle at the bottom, ManoSQL Geek. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. If you have any questions after today, or if you have any questions related to any other areas in the data platform, that is the best way to reach me. So let's start with the demos. So today's topic is Power Apps and Flow, best practices when you're working with SQL Server or any other database. So I'm not sure if I'll quickly start with what uh, Power Apps is, and from there on we'll see uh, how things work in Power Apps. So I'm just quickly opening up a couple of windows for me to enable to see what's going on. All right. So, so if you have any of you have already, if you have worked with Power Apps, you know that Power Apps is a platform where you can actually quickly build apps by using GUI, drag and drop methodologies, and then you create objects and connections from which you can build your apps quickly and deploy in your organization. So with these, it is limited to within your organization. It works with AD authentications and any other form of internal authentication that you have, but it's not possible to share these apps external to any other outside your company. So it's currently not available. So let's quickly start with creating a basic app and show you how you can make a connection. So I'll start with creating a Canvas app in Power Apps. So when I open, there are different templates that you can start with and phone and tablet layout. So let's start with blank app and say a tablet layout, which is friendly for a desktop version of an app. I'll skip any intros. So when you start, it looks like this, which is, if you have worked with Visual Studio or any other development platform before, you would see this a little bit familiar because it has got the properties and advanced settings that you can control. On the right side, you've got left side where you have different objects, like, you have the screen, the app itself, the connections that you create in this, and any other advanced tools that you have. So from here, let's start on the first screen, and first let's connect to a data set. So it will open the connections tab on the left side. So under connectors, you have various different connectors. So let's select SQL Server, which is a premium connector, and I have already added few connections here. So let's just select one of the connections that I already created. But it's very easy to create a connection in Power Apps. You can just go to under data, there is connections, and you can start creating a new connection here, or you can directly create a new connections from here itself, like add a connection. So excuse me for my voice. I have been suffering from cold and cough for past few days, so please bear with that. So I'll be using this connection, which is connected to my Azure SQL DB with a connection to a database. So I'll just select that. So when I select that, it gets added to your application. So inside your application, you will have the database added as a connection. That's taking a little longer than what I would expect. All right, what's going on? Okay, so it has asked me to choose a table for connecting to the data. So I will not choose any table at this point. But what I'll do is go to my screen here and start adding. I'll just start with a gallery. So gallery is just a collection of items that you can provide as inside is used to view a collection or a data set which has multiple lines. So I'll just add that and say from the data source, because I don't have that connection added earlier. So I'll just select that database again. Let's see if it connects. Doesn't see all the tables. All right, so let's enter a custom value. I've got DPS 2019 dot all sessions. See if it connects. No. Let me quickly do something. I will close this app without saving these settings. And quickly bring another screen where I've got this connection in an application, but it's a blank application. So I've got this connection where I've connected to the same data set, so DPS with dps10.database.windows.net, and I'm connecting to a table called all sessions. It's a view actually, it's not a table, so I've selected that view. So here I will go ahead and add a gallery item, gallery, and then select the data source as that SQL Server table or view in this case. And from here on, I'll start editing the item list and can add labels and buttons here. So instead of adding the label, I'll start with text input field where I can say this item. So there are a set of items and it has got the field names in it. Not sure if it is connected. Yes. So this item dot title. So I'm not sure what's going on because it was working earlier. That's my gallery. It's connected to the data set. I'll just try adding it again. Yeah, there it is, this item dot. I'm not sure what happened there, but this is working now. So I display the session type here, and then I can add another text field and say, I'll display the, we can start adding labels and then putting the text input fields there. I'll just add a couple of other items and say what they are. So the title of the session. So by the way, this data is coming from a database which has got DPS, like the DPS 2019 sessions list. So I'm just seeing all those, and then I can have a speaker name here. All right. Excuse me. So I've displayed these fields. Now if you're creating any app, in most cases the reason you create an app is either you want to view it, but for viewing you have reports. But the app is more interactive, so you want to input or change few things. So when I have a view like this in as a data source, so when I start adding that table or a view as a data source and as a data set in my app, it exposes all the fields in that table. So when I say this item dot, actually it's exposing all the fields. And my base tables have got more information than that I want to expose in the app. Like for a speaker table, I've got the speaker email and all those phone numbers and all those details, and I don't want to expose that. And that's why I have a view on top of it, which extracts only those values, like hides all the speaker details, but only exposes the name and those things. But when I have the view, to update any data in the view, it needs to be schema bind, and then when I start, the way you can actually update a field in Power Apps is you actually use a function called patch. So the way the patch works is when you change some field, so there is a property which you can set. So on change, I'd say it's doing nothing, but rather than that, I would say patch. And what does patch do is takes the data source. So in this case, it's DPS 2019.all sessions. So that's my data source. And then my record is this item. So this is the current item that I'm editing. And then whether I should update or not. So what should I do? So I'll just say set the level field value to so whatever this text box value is, so it's text input 10. So I say set that value to text input 10 dot text. So in this case, what I'm doing is when I change this value, I'm asking to update the data set. But you see there is a cross mark over top of it and it says the formula, sorry, that's the formula bit. It's fine. But in this case, when you see there is an error on top of it, it says the data source is read only. The reason for this is the first thing is it's a view. So in Power Apps, there is no way to edit data in a view. The second thing is even though you connect to a table, the table needs to have a primary key. So that's the only way your data set can update any values in your Power Apps can update any value in your data set. So without those two uh, uh, set in place, like not being a view or exposing your whole table and having a primary key, are prerequisites for using a patch function. So in this case, whenever it's not possible to provide that edit functionality directly by creating a data source connected to a view or just a table. If you want to extract and create a table and maintain the updated status in the table. So to overcome these limitations, we can use other functionality of or other tool of Microsoft called Flow. So flow is basically where you can define a set of steps to happen when on certain triggering points and perform some action and get some output done or get some work done in the flow process. So let's see another example. So now for this example, I'll show an app that is already built and that we have used during Data Platform Summit. So I will quickly go to Power Apps. Excuse me. So this is one of the apps that we have built to help our volunteers who are sitting in the room and tracking the status of the session. So in this case, what we have done, I'll quickly walk you through the app and tell you what we have done behind the scenes. So this is the app where the room monitor sitting in the room knows which day he's in, like day 1, day 2, day 3, and which room he is sitting in. And if he knows the speaker name, he can type that in. Otherwise, it picks all the sessions for that day in that particular room. So if I am day 2, and if you have attended Data Platform Summit, you would know the room names, which are like the code names of SQL Server. So Hydra is one of our rooms, and when I search without providing the speaker name, it gets the list of sessions for day 2 in that particular room. So in a day there are 5 sessions in a room, and I can see those 5 sessions listed here. So it has got the speaker name and the session title. And when the volunteer clicks on the log details, he can see that, okay, it's Hydra, the speaker name is populated, these fields are not editable. Like you see the room name, the speaker, the title, and the time. But it's the responsibility of the volunteer to track the actual start time. When did the session actually started? Put in his name and count how many attendees are in the room. Put that in there, and if he has shown that 15 minutes reminder, like before the session ended, there's 15-minute reminder. If he has shown those reminders to the speaker, if there were any technical issues that happens during the session, and if it when he's finished that, he clicks on save, and this data gets saved into a database behind the scenes. So I'll show you how it's writing and fetching the data. But this is a basic app where it has got few sections where it can be updated throughout the day, throughout the sessions, and we can keep track of these things. And if we see that there are some technical issues noted for a particular session, we can fix that even before that session ended, or even before we sit at the end of the day and try to collate those list of problems. Instead of doing that, it was live and real time. So this kind of management was possible with Power Apps. And this app was built in like less than a day. So it was in between all the juggling and shuffling of things. This app was built just whenever I got some time, and this app was built. So it is very easy and quick to build apps using Power Apps. So let's go back. Sorry. And see how this app works. So in previous case, when I was showing an app where I was pulling the list of speakers, there was no way to filter that. So there is a lookup function that you can do. So you actually need to provide those values and run a lookup. And what it does is basically gets all the data and then looks up what values are available. It's similar to what you do in lookup in SSIS if you have worked with SSIS before, where you actually cache the data and then filter based on what value you want to look for. Or if you have used Excel also, it's a similar thing. You have a set of data that is cached in memory and then you look up a particular value. But in both the cases, it actually needs to fetch all the data into the memory, or in this case into the Power Apps from the database. So there's no way to actually filter the data directly if you're connecting to a direct table. So in this case, what happens is uh, I have used flows behind the scenes. So let me also open flow, Power Apps, connect to flow. And so I'll quickly pull that out. And I will open the flow that I've used for this application. All right, so I'll fetch this up, then there. So in this case, when I'm actually passing in the session day, the room and the speaker name, whether it's blank or not, what happens is this drop downs is pretty much hard coded for this case because it's a collection. And when the app is loaded, I'm actually setting few parameters, like it says the reminder status collection to be set to yes or no. And when this app is loaded, uh, I'm filling in the room names. So this is not pulled from the database. I'm actually hard coding those values, but you can also run a flow here to fetch the data to fetch the filter data from a table on your database. But essentially you are actually pre-populating the database the table drop down list. So in this case, when I select day one, it's actually passing in the date value, which is the 22nd August 2019. That's when the conference happened. And it has got the room name. So there is no second field in this collection, but in this collection there is two fields, day and date. So for this, so if you observe the names, the collection names is called room and call session dates. So those are the collections. So for this application, when I've got the first drop-down list, I've set that drop-down list to get the data from call session dates, and the room drop-down to get the data from call room. So this is basically setting up the data filter values. When I select that, the search, when someone clicks on search, what I'm doing is calling a flow called get RM volunteers. And to run this flow, I need to pass two parameters, the room name, the date, and actually if the speaker value is blank, pass a blank value, otherwise pass the speaker name. So this is what I'm passing. So there are three parameters that the flow accepts. So it's like a function that I'm calling. And when I'm calling that function, whatever data is written, I'm trying to save it into the collection called session details. So clear collect is a function which accepts two parameters, or actually more than two parameters. You have got a collection name and then the list of items after that. So this one returns the list of items, and collection is the one which is saved, in which the items are, a list of items is saved. So if you go to the flow, it is actually triggered by a Power Apps action, which is nothing but that clicking on that search. So on select function, sorry, and it calls a SQL store procedure on that connection, so DPS connection, and it has got a stored procedure which accepts three parameters as I was showing in Power Apps. So I've got the room, the session date, and the speaker. So I actually pass in the filter values. And when it comes to SQL Server, there is a lot more control on what you can do within a stored procedure in SQL Server. So you can actually get the data from the views. You can write to the views. You can get the base tables of the view and update multiple tables as well based on the values that you're getting as parameters in your stored procedures. So there's a lot more control and a lot more security control built into stored procedures as well. Like you can give permission to certain user to update only few tables or execute a stored procedure only rather than writing to a table. And you can limit that stored procedure to do certain functionality only and not update the whole table. So that way you're actually having more control on in terms of security as well as in terms of what data you are writing or reading out of your database. So this doesn't get exposed as a plain flat table to the user in PowerApps. And when this stored procedure is executed, I can show you the code, but you can make sense out of it. Like it actually gets that room session date, passes that in the where clause, and just gets the list of session names. And when it spits out that uh, table, the result set, I'm just defining the JSON structure of that result set. So what it returns is the session code, the session date, the session time, and all the other fields that I'm getting from that view. All right, so all of that is passed as a result from that select statement, which is run inside the stored procedure, passing on those filters. So this way I can actually control how much data I am retrieving from the database. So without selecting, the maximum anyone can pull is 5 sessions only, because it has to be filtered down to a day and a room. So that way I've got more filtering that I can control rather than just fetching all the data and then doing a lookup to filter the data. So this is the way you filter, you get the data. When it comes to uh, updating the data, so all I do is when I search and when I click on log, uh, so inside that I've got a button called edit monitoring. So when I click on that log details, it actually navigates to a second screen and sets few variables to the values that you see in that particular collection. And once that is done, it loads the second screen. And in that screen, all the pre-populated values will be there, but you have the other fields. So when I click on save again here, uh, I'm actually doing some functions to make sure that the time that they enter is correct. I'm doing some regular expression check to make sure that the values are right, making sure the volunteer name is not blank, and then calling the flow set RM volunteers again, which is another flow. If I can pull that up. And in this case, again, it's a PowerApps trigger, which calls again a stored procedure, but accepts so many parameters that you get from the screen here, all those parameters that are passed, and uses the stored procedure to update a particular row rather than updating the whole table. Uh, so this way you can actually control what fields are written and what fields are not written into the database. So you get the basic idea of how you can leverage flow to filter down the data or update a single row in this case. It's easier to do this way when you have to update just single row. So you click on edit something and then you save that. But imagine a scenario where you have to actually do this in batches. You don't have the functionality to do, you have the requirement to actually update multiple rows, not just one single row in a go. And in most scenarios, that is the case, right? You actually open something, you make all your changes and then save those changes. That means you are actually you want to update multiple rows and multiple tables in a single row. Even that is a possibility. So let's look at another application that um, I have built, which demonstrates that uh, part of it, where you actually uh, so in this scenario, what I've got is I am so let's assume that you are I'm working in a company, and then I've got staff members in the company who set their professional, personal, and career goals for the year, for the financial year, and they get reviewed. Their performance review happens at the end of the year based on whatever they have set and whatever they have achieved based on that goals that they have set. So in this scenario, so if I have to open an application, like I create a new application. So this is where I am going to set my goals. So I would put what my goal is, what I will do, how, so that what I will achieve by doing that, and what is my strategy to achieve that. So there is one personal goal that I need to set, there's one professional goal I need to set, and one career goal I need to set. So in this process of filling this application, what happens is there's a lot of to and fro. Like I want to fill this, go back, think about it, come back, save this, edit it later, pick up from the point where I've saved earlier, and finally when it's time I actually submit that application. So there's a lot of back and forth, and I need to save the status whenever I edit some application. And you could have seen these kind of things when you apply for something, when you apply for a visa process or something, you submit till the point you submit the application, you save the application, keep editing it, adding things, removing things, those kind of things, right? So in this application I'll just show you how this works. So quickly, I'll put in this is my first review. uh, Put my goal one. I'll not Gopal one. Sorry. So my personal goal, blah blah blah. So I'll put my goal 2 again, blah blah blah. I don't want to achieve anything. Goal 3, I want to achieve something in my career, but yeah, for this demo I'll just leave it. So in this case I've filled in values, but I want to save this and come back and review later, so I'll just save this. It gets me back to the main screen. Not yet submitted. It says yes, you have saved the form, but it's not yet submitted. You can return anytime and complete it, and then you can submit later on. So I have saved it, but how do I access it back? So when I click on the application again, it has got that new and edit. So it knows that I have saved an application, and when it loads again, actually it loads my previous application that I've filled in. So just to see if it's going to change my changes, like save my changes. So I'll change my date of completion to 7th of November, save it. Yes, it throws that pop-up, and then when I again click on that, it didn't actually save it. That's great. I don't know what went wrong there, but let's make this again, try this again. IVKL. Huh. All right, something's amiss there. But again, so let's go back and see how this application is built. We will not spend any time troubleshooting or fixing that application, but what we want to see is how multiple rows are getting patched. Okay, I didn't know that. All right. So what happens is when I click on that new edit application, when the application loads, it actually gets my profile from my Office 365. So I've logged in, so it knows who I am. So it gets my name and my email address. So there are some pre-populated fields that I can use. When I click on that new application, it runs a flow which actually passes my username and says this is a new form. So these are the two parameters that this flow accepts. And once I get the data from the that flow returns some information, I actually populate the fields, the variables based on the data that I'm getting from that new form. And then I create a goals collection from that form, from the new form data, which has got the goal ID, title. I'll shortly show you what this meant, what data is coming out of this flow. So let me go and edit that flow so that I can show you what's going on inside that flow. So this is my flow. So again, a Power Apps action, I'm executing a stored procedure. It is taking that source and the staff name and then getting a response out of it. So I'll go back and get that data. So this is my schema. So I've got a few tables. I've got some metadata where it says what is approval status or those kind of things. Whether it's saved, what is the form status, again some metadata that look up values that it has. But the main table is I've got a goals table where I'm saving my goal ID, the form ID, and what I've all those fields that are coming from the application. I've got a person table. So this is my main table where I've got my details saved, like what is the form ID, what is my name, what is my staff name, and all other fields like who will be the approver, who will approve, and what is approval date, and all those things. So if you see, the form ID is the primary key in this table. and I've got a goal ID in this table. So I can have one form which has got multiple goals. So in this case, I've got 3 fixed goals for each form that I'm raising. And when I'm actually getting the data from the store procedure, what I am doing here is, I'll go here. So I'm passing that staff name and the new form. So what it does is checks what is the cutoff date. There is some cleanup or maintenance housekeeping that is done at the initially when the procedure starts, but it is actually joining the data from 2 tables, the person, and if there is an approved application, it will not fetch any data, but if there is an application that already exists, then it gets the data from that saved application. If there is no application, it pre-populates some values. So when I have opened that application for the first time, you have seen that my goal type of personal, professional, and career was already pre-populated. So that's coming from this select statement. If I have already got the goal inserted, then it gets the data that is saved in the database from that select statement. So it's just doing that if else condition here. And getting the data out of it. So that's the only thing that store procedure is doing. When I insert the data, when I insert the goal from, so that is when I actually click on save. So what happens in save is, I'll again go back to the SQL. So I pass in the person string and the goal string. So how this works is, in this case, I don't have to update one table, but actually have to update 2 tables. So in the Power Apps, I am, let me go, where is that? All right, so that's great. So in Power Apps, what I'm doing here is when I click on, sorry. All right, so when I click on that save button, what it does is actually building 2 strings, one for the person, which is the form ID, which is the top layer out of that goals. So here, fetching my name, my review number, date of completion, which is common for all the goals. So that's my person string. And there is another string which is a collection of all the goals. So what it does, it actually loops through the goals gallery. So that's the gallery that has got the goals in here, and it sets all the values that I'm changing in that field to the value that is entered into that text fields. Like if I change the title of the goal, it updates the goal title. If I change the I will field, it will update that I will. And then it builds a string in the JSON format where it's concatenating all the field values and just making a string out of it. So it's easy to parse a JSON in SQL Server, because from SQL Server 2016 onwards, you can actually uh, read JSON data in SQL Server. So I have actually got multiple rows and 2 strings. That means I can actually update 2 tables with 2 strings, and the data is coming from in the JSON format from the application. So if you see the history of my sorry, my insert, so I'll just go to the run history, and this was run like 6 minutes ago. We know that. And when you see the input parameters, you see the goal type. So that is the values that I've entered, and the form ID 1, that's the person string. And you see the goals, like there is goal 1 there. There's a concatenated string of goal 2 and goal 3 as well. So it's coming as LVKL, but my store procedure may be an old version where I had made some changes today. That means I would have broken it. Well, that's fine. So So those are the two strings that I'm passing in as parameters. And inside SQL Server, what I'm doing is when I'm inserting, I'll just show you that insert stored procedure again. So I'm reading the string with open JSON function. That means I'm actually reading it as a table and fetching the person details into a temporary table, using that to insert data into my person table, and reading the goals from the goals string by using OpenJSON, and again uh, populating the goals table with the data that is coming from that that JSON string from the Power Apps. If it is already existing, if the table doesn't exist, then it inserts. If it exists, it needs to update. For some reason, that update isn't working, but that's fine. So we can do it later. Uh, so that message that you're seeing, like whether form saved, not yet submitted, that the pop-up that you are seeing on the screen when I click on save is coming from this, where I actually set the status of that application to saved and pass on this message as an output, and send that across to Power Apps. So that is the response that is coming out of this function call. And when you see the output, the status is the output that is coming from that stored procedure. So that's an output parameter from that stored procedure. And I use that output parameter on a return status screen, which you don't see at this point. I can actually run this. Click on save and close this application when that pop-up comes up. So when you see that, you actually don't see that black screen. It's actually hidden. This I'm toggling the visible feature, like see that visible. It is based on a function. So that visibility of that particular uh, set of items is based on a return status pop-up that is set when I click on save. That value is set at the end of that save call. So when I click on that button, where is my button? Star save. So if you see the button save command, at the end I'm setting that pop-up display the pop-up value. So that means my pop-up is displayed now, in which I've got a blank background and a label which displays the status from the value that I'm receiving back from the save call, and an OK button. And when I click on the OK button, it sets that again that pop-up display to false and navigates back to the landing page. So that is what happens when the when my application is run. So in terms of the data, the best practices part of how you are updating the data. So when you are updating multiple rows, the hack here is or the trick here is to actually build a JSON string with multiple rows in it and parse the JSON in your SQL server in a stored procedure, where you can parse that JSON and get the data which you can insert into multiple tables or update into multiple tables, which you can't do directly if you have just the table as a connection in your Power Apps. So that makes it a lot easier and gives you a lot of control when you use stored procedures to update multiple rows and multiple fields and multiple tables when it comes to using Power Apps. So that pretty much covers what I want to show in this session. If you have any questions, I am open to take it now, but I think Satya may have a few things to talk about before I open the floor for questions, but please do start typing in your questions while Satya uh, has something to cover. Satya?
Yes, Manu, I'm sharing my screen.
Sure, thanks.
I hope it was a very nice session. Meanwhile, I'll go through few slides. So if you have any questions, you can use Q&A panel to post your questions. And here are the few social channels you can also use. So SQL Maestros, as I told you, is coming up with video courses. One is SQL Server Performance Tuning, and other one is T-SQL Querying and Programming. And as you know, video courses are like master series and more than 100 hours of content. It's a comprehensive coverage, and it's advanced, deep dive, and expert level modules. And we do update these modules constantly so that we can stay in touch with latest features of SQL Server when it comes to performance tuning and when it comes to T-SQL querying. You can learn more about T-SQL performance tuning course here using this bit.ly link. I think my colleague Aarti is posting these links in chat window, and you can, if you wish to know more about T-SQL querying and programming, you can use this bit.ly link. Or else, like, you can just visit sqlmaestros.com, and if you have any queries, you can write back to contact@sqlmaestros.com. As we have already discussed, we have another learning solution called hands-on labs, under which we have more than 100 labs on SQL Server, Azure, Power BI, Analytics, Cosmos DB, and anything and everything related to Microsoft Data Platform and AI Stack. So each lab contains scripts and respective screenshots, explanations, observations, so that you can learn any concept in a practical way. So the best way to do learn is to do it yourself. So that's what with that idea we have come up with this hands-on labs project. We have more than 2,000 subscribers right now. If you want to learn more about hands-on lab solution by SQL Maestros, you can visit this bit.ly link, bit.ly/SQL Maestros HVS. So we have a couple of other upcoming events coming up. So November 9th, if you're in Bangalore, we have an event, and the agenda is already announced. And we are also coming up with another data platform day on November 23rd on Hyderabad. So we have few webinars lined up for November and December. We'll announce the schedule very soon in next 1 week. So thank you very much for attending this webinar. So you can find this webinar recording in our YouTube channel in a couple of days. You can follow us in these social channels so that you can get notified about our upcoming free events and webinars. So that's all about today, and I'll hand it over to Manu to take up questions.
Looks like either I have covered the topic really well or just over the head. So there are not many questions. So what I'll do is, yeah, as Satya has mentioned, we have recorded this webinar, so it will be uploaded for viewing it later on. I know it's a lot of content to take in. You need to try hands-on to get experience with Power Apps. Unless or until you do it with your hands, it's very hard to understand what's going on behind the scenes with Power Apps. So I'd recommend to actually go through and start creating your Power Apps and see how it works, and use this video. And there's a lot of other blogs that can help you with building Power Apps. And uh, the functionality keeps changing. The licensing has changed a lot in the last month. So this month there were previously there used to be P1 and P2 licensing for Power Apps. That's changed now to per user and per app licensing model. So that changes the ground a bit, because with per user or per app licensing, you actually get all the premium features covered, rather other, like, in previously P1 and P2 has a lot of differences, and if you have to use certain things, you need to go to P2 for few users. So it was a lot of confusing licensing before. Now I think it has made it a little bit clear in terms of licensing. So if you just got license, that means you have access to all the content. So there's one question that I've just received. I've integrated Power App report with Power BI. When I select email in Power BI Slicer, Power Apps is not fetching related data. Could you please help me on this to get related raw data in Power Apps on basis of Power BI Slicer? So I'm not 100% sure if I understand the question correctly. So when you say if you've got an integrated Power App report with Power BI, that means have you got a Power BI tile inserted in Power Apps, or if you have actually integrated a Power App inside Power BI? If it looks more like the second scenario where you have integrated Power Apps into Power BI, in that case, actually the slicer filter is not passed to the Power Apps. So to make that work, you actually have to have trigger when you change that slicer, uh, or just add that filter as a drop down or something inside the Power App itself, where you are embedding into the Power App in the Power BI. So because you've got that report in Power Apps, I'm not sure 100%. I'm not 100% sure how you have implemented that. When you have Power Apps, I would say the slicer or the filter functionality can be added to the Power App itself rather than having it in a Power BI. Yeah, reporting inside Power Apps is not that great when you compare it with Power BI. But as understandable, Power Apps is an application tool, and Power BI is a reporting tool. So definitely there is a lot rich reporting functionality that comes with Power BI, whereas in Power Apps it's more of an application platform. So I can quite understand where the difficulty lies. Uh, So if there are no further questions, what I would do is actually paste my Twitter handle so that if you have any more questions, you can ask me later on. Uh, but also please, sorry, I need to paste it for all attendees. Cool. Uh, Thanks, Satya, for doing that. Anyways, so go through this video again. You have to go through it multiple times. I know it's very hard to get in the first go. Um, so try hands-on. I would say that is the best way to learn Power Apps and Flow. There's a lot of things that are changing in this space because it's relatively new. Uh, but once you get hand of it, or once you get hang of it, it's very easy to understand and make changes and uh, see how beneficial it would be for within your organization. With that, I would like to say thank you for taking your time and attending this webinar, and thanks for Satya and the Data Platform Geeks and eDomina teams for hosting this webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Manu. And all the audience, we have just posted a thank you message on Facebook. So please put up your feedback in the Facebook. That will encourage speakers to come back and deliver more sessions in the future. That will help you, the community. So the link is already there in chat window. Please use the link and post up your comments there. Thank you.